My wife and I moved into a new house in the suburbs. The house had just been refurbished but still had some very old furniture, which creeped me out, but we always laughed it off. One night, I was in the living room watching a documentary when I heard my wife calling me from the basement. I was kind of mad because she would always call me and make me go to her, instead of just telling me what she needed from wherever she was. I didn't want to go down there just for her to ask me to pick up a spoon that fell under the furniture. So, I only answered, listening, and kept watching the documentary. After a couple of minutes, she yelled my name again, and I only said, I'm listening. She kept quiet, so I didn't bother. She could keep calling me the whole night, but there was no way I would go down there. Once again, she called me, and I said, "What's up? I'm listening." But she kept quiet. Literally 5 minutes after the last time she called me, my wife entered the house through the front door with some groceries. I had forgotten she had gone shopping. Scared, I asked, "Were you out? I heard you calling me from the basement." She laughed, thinking I was just joking, but soon realized I was dead serious. Frightened, we both went down to the basement to investigate. Weirdly, the lights were not working, even though they had been fine that morning. We were both very scared that night. We tried to fall asleep, but couldn't, as an overwhelming feeling of fear dominated us like never before. We left the house that night to sleep at her parents' place because we couldn't bear the thought of being with a strange spirit or whatever it was that had been calling me from the basement. Despite multiple investigations, the mystery of who, or what, called me from the basement remains unsolved to this day. I was working at a big supermarket, which was in the underground of a mall. They say that from 1718 until 1987, the place used to be a hospital, and the underground floor is where they kept the bodies of people who passed away back then. This was just common knowledge and never scared anyone. I used to work during the day, which was always a busy time, and never gave me much time to think about the stuff that was happening there back then, even though it freaked me out. At some point, my manager asked me if I could cover the night shift for the week, as strangely, 3 workers felt sick the night before and couldn't come to work this night. At that point, I accepted and didn't even think that something strange could have happened to them at work. I only thought they were sick. So, I accepted and came to work that night. It was only John and I, to cover the shift as no one else could come. John remembered that when I first started, I mentioned being kind of scared about the place being a hospital before. So John, a full-time night shifter, started to pull pranks on me and telling creepy stories to scare me. I only laughed it off, pretending I wouldn't give him attention, knowing he only wanted to mess with me. But I already started having a strange feeling. After a few hours into the shift, it was around 3 a.m., John was in the back room organizing some crates, so I went to the bathroom, which was in the dressing room. I was there minding my own business when the lights started flickering, and I heard a giggle coming from the dressing room. I knew it was John messing with me, so I started telling him to quit it and leave me alone. He wouldn't stop. I tried to calm myself down, swearing to myself it was the last time I'd work with John. Then, suddenly, I got a text message. It was from John, saying he went to the parking lot for a smoke and if I could start stacking the milk crates near the fridges. This freaked me out as the giggles and lights flickering continued. Still, thinking it was a prank, I FaceTimed him to hear if the phone would ring in the dressing room, but to my surprise, John was really out in the parking lot. I showed him the lights through the phone, and he even heard the giggles. His face changed. He ran upstairs to find me. But right when he opened the dressing room door, everything stopped abruptly. The lights were back to normal. I left the bathroom, and what scared me the most was seeing John's scared face, knowing that this time it really wasn't him pulling a prank on me. The very next day, John and I quit our jobs and swore to never come back to the supermarket again. I was a college student, working late at a small-town coffee shop to make ends meet. One night, after my shift ended around midnight, I began my usual walk home through the quiet, dimly lit streets. I was exhausted and just wanted to get back to my apartment and crash. Halfway through my walk, a car slowly pulled up beside me. The driver, a middle-aged man with an unsettlingly wide smile, asked if I needed a ride. Despite feeling a bit uneasy, I declined politely, insisting I was fine. He persisted, saying it was dangerous for a young woman to be walking alone at that hour, but I firmly refused and kept walking. A few weeks later, the town was shaken by shocking news. A notorious serial killer had been captured. His mugshot was plastered all over the news, and my blood ran cold when I saw it. It was the same man who had offered me a ride that night. According to reports, he had been cruising the area, looking for potential victims, targeting women who were alone and vulnerable. The police revealed chilling details of his crimes and how narrowly some of his potential victims had escaped. I couldn't shake the thought of how close I had come to becoming one of his statistics. The realization that I had unknowingly escaped a serial killer left me with a permanent sense of vigilance, always reminding me how a simple decision might have saved my life. During my junior year of college, I rented a small, cheap apartment off campus. The building was old and a bit run down, but the price was right. My roommate Kelly and I often joked about how creepy the place felt, especially the basement laundry room. The dim lighting and echoing pipes made it the perfect setting for a horror movie. One Friday night, I realized I had no clean clothes for the weekend and reluctantly headed down to the basement to do laundry. As I was loading the machine, I heard muffled voices coming from one of the storage rooms. It struck me as odd because I'd never seen anyone else down there that late. Curiosity got the better of me, and I quietly approached the door. The voices were clearer now, low and conspiratorial. Suddenly, the door creaked open, and two men emerged, both looking startled to see me. They quickly composed themselves, smiled, and walked past me without a word. Feeling uneasy, I hurried back to my apartment and told Kelly what happened. We laughed it off, convincing ourselves it was probably just other tenants with a late-night storage need. The next morning, however, our building was swarming with police. We learned that a notorious local gang had been using our building's basement as a hideout to plan their criminal activities. The two men I saw were part of the gang, and the police had been monitoring them for weeks. I shuddered at the thought of what could have happened if I had been nosier, or if they had decided I was a threat. The authorities told us they had arrested several members that night and were continuing their investigation. Kelly and I moved out shortly after, but I never forgot how close I came to stumbling into a dangerous criminal operation right beneath my feet. It was supposed to be a routine day at work, but everything changed when I stepped out for lunch. As I walked back to the office, a van screeched to a halt beside me, and before I could react, I was dragged inside. Blindfolded and bound, I was driven to an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town. For days, I was kept in a dingy, dimly lit room, my only contact with my captor being his menacing voice threatening me with violence if my family didn't pay up. Each time he spoke, his words dripped with malice, sending shivers down my spine. I pleaded with him, begged for mercy, but he remained cold and unyielding. Meanwhile, my family scrambled to gather the ransom money, fearing the worst with each passing hour. It felt like an eternity, trapped in that suffocating space, with no idea if help would ever come. But just when all hope seemed lost, the authorities launched a daring rescue operation. Bursting through the doors, they apprehended my captor and freed me from my nightmare. Though physically unharmed, the trauma of those days lingered long after my release. The experience taught me the fragility of life and the resilience of the human spirit. I vowed to never take another moment for granted, cherishing each day as a precious gift.